So we will start the training with the introduction to GSIM presentation from Jenny Linnerud from Statistical Norway. Jenny is an information architect in Statistical Norway. She has been heavily involved in development and revision of GSIM. So we are very happy to have Jenny to give overview of the GSIM. Jenny, please go ahead if you're ready.
My agenda for the introduction to GSIM is to talk a little bit about ModernStats models and frameworks, then go into what is GSIM, and in particular the relationship between GSIM and GSBPM, talk about the top-level information object groups, and then let you know where you can find more information on GSIM. So GSIM is one of the models under ModernStats models and frameworks. And we're all in the same boat together. All statistical organizations should be using standardized and industrial processes for the production of statistics in order to be more efficient. And the statistical community has come a long way to realizing this goal with models and frameworks that we can all use. We want to decrease unnecessary diversity and duplication within the official statistics community. And we wish to provide a common language for statistical organizations so that when we meet at international meetings, we're talking the same language to each other. So under this group, there are 4 different models. The GAMSO, which is a generic activity model for statistical organizations, and a new version came out this year, January of this year. We're now on version 1.2. The GSBPM, that's the oldest one. It's on the version 5.1 in January this year. That's the generic statistical business process model. And we also have CSPA, the Common Statistical Production Architecture, which was on version 1.5 in December 2015, but I know they're working on a new version as we speak. And then the GSIM, the one that we'll be talking about today. The new version, 1.2, came out in August of 2019. So the 1.2 is really fresh. Here we, in August 2018, we showed how different people are using the models, how far they're getting on the scale from not using, they're interested in using, they have a basic use, it's spreading in their organization, there's a widespread use in their organization, and they're mature. They're exploiting all the positive features of it. So if we have a look at the GSBPM, then we can see that already it's spreading. And if we look at the GSIM, we're at the level where there is interest in the model, a lot of interest in the model, and we're beginning to see it spreading. That was the situation in August 2018. So, modernization. Modernization of statistics can be supported by reuse and sharing of methods, components, processes, metadata, and data. And when I say methods, that's not just statistical methods. It could be IT methods, data capture methods, all sorts of methods. And components. A component is just a part of a system. We're looking at sharing different parts of systems across different statistical processes. Now, the generic statistical information model, the GSIM, is the first internationally endorsed reference framework for statistical information. by statistical organizations and for statistical organizations. When I say reference framework, that means that we can implement it as we wish, as so detailed as we wish. We can implement parts of it, more parts of it, maybe the entire model. That's up to us, what we wish to do. But it's a reference framework because when we get together, we can talk about different parts of the framework. I'm working on the green bit. Oh, we've made a lot of progress on the blue bit. You can refer to it, and then we all have a common language for sharing experience. And this is an overarching conceptual framework, which will play an important role in modernizing, streamlining, and aligning the standards and production associated with official statistics at both national and international levels. When I say it's conceptual, then the idea is that this is for people to talk to people. That's the conceptual level. We agree on the names of things that we're talking about. We agree on the definitions and the relationships. And then if we want machines to talk to machines, we're down at the physical level. But if we want humans to be creating systems, talking to machines, then we're at a logical level, the next level of detail. Okay, so what is GSIM? Reference framework, yes, of internationally agreed definitions, attributes, and relationships that describe the pieces of information used in the production of official statistics. And that's what we mean by information objects, the pieces of information used in the production of the official statistics. And this framework enables generic descriptions of the definition, management, and use of data and metadata throughout the statistical production process. Exactly what we've said that we need for modernization. So who was involved in developing the GSIM? There was 14 different countries and 3 different international organizations. The international organizations, the UNECE and Eurostat and IMF were involved in the GSIM version 1.0. You can see that Australia contributed a large part, and Canada, the Netherlands was heavily involved, and you might find all your countries in this picture. A lot of involvement in GSIM version 1.0, which was released in 2012. That's 7 years ago. So we have a lot more experience to share with each other today. What are these top-level information object groups? The blue group, the business group. The red group, the exchange. Green group, concepts. Yellow group, structures. What are these? Well, the business group handles user needs, the structure of a statistical program, has process steps, methods, rules, and execution of the process. Yellow group describes how data is structured, what format it is in, and where it is stored. It also includes reference metadata, documentation for the data. The red group, the exchange group, describes information that comes in and goes out of the organization. It covers exchange channels for the information and provision agreements on what you can take in and what you deliver out of your organization. This green group, this is the one that has the longest traditions and the most experience. So if you were just starting to look at implementing GSIM in your organization, then I could recommend that you look at this green group. It has statistical content, definitions of concepts, of variables, populations, unit types, the meaning of codes. It's got statistical classifications and code lists. And all of these are quite familiar in statistical organization, and they're a good place to start implementing. In addition to these 4 groups that we will be describing more in detail throughout this training today, there's actually a 5th group, the base group. Oops. There it comes. This base group has reusable attributes for information objects. It handles identity and versioning. So if you're interested in what to do when your variables are getting updated, when your data sets are changing, then the base group is key to how you will handle changes in the information objects in the whole GSIM. So, going a bit more into these 4 top-level groups, and you'll find these colours are consistently used throughout today. The concepts group is used to define the meaning of data, providing an understanding of what the data are measuring. The structures group is used to describe and define the terms used in relation to information and its structure. Blue business group is used to capture the designs and plans of statistical programs and the processes undertaken to deliver those programs. This includes the identification of a statistical need, the business processes that comprise the statistical program, and the evaluations of them. Exchange group is used to catalog the information that comes in and out of a statistical organization via exchange channels. It includes objects that describe the collection and the dissemination of information. So here we have a simplified view of GSIM information objects. Here we've just showed 5 information objects in each group. And in the course of today, we'll be looking at these in more detail. So beginning with the most familiar group, the concepts, you can see that we have the variable, we have unit type, we have statistical classification, the value domain, and an instance variable. So we're going into the different types of variables later today in the concepts group. And unit types, for example, would be a family, a person, household, enterprise. And we'll talk about those later today too. In the structures group, you can see that we have a data set, which has a known data structure. You have an information resource, which has both data and metadata. You have referential metadata set and referential metadata structure. We'll be coming back to all of these later today. At the end of the day, we'll be looking at the exchange group. So you have an information provider with a provision agreement with the statistical organization to use a particular exchange channel. You might have people filling out questionnaires to deliver information to you, or you might have an administrative register that you take into your own organization and make into a statistical register. In your business group, you have it's all beginning with a statistical need, and then you're making your statistical program. Designing it with your statistical program design. You're looking at your business process and you're making the business process more detailed into process steps when you design your process. And then in the other way we have is GSIM information objects that tell a story. And here's your story. So a statistical organization initiates a statistical program, and the statistical program corresponds to an ongoing activity, such as a survey or an output series, and this has a statistical program cycle. For example, it repeats quarterly or maybe annually. The statistical program cycle will include a set of business processes. The business processes consist of a number of process steps. These are specified by process design. These process designs have process input specifications and process output specifications. The specifications will include pieces of information from the structures and concepts groups. For example, from the concept group, statistical classification, variables, the population, and then from the structures group, the data structure and the data set. For example, if the business process is related to the collection of data, there will be an information provider. I can see there's a, from my side, I can see a white box covering over the information provider who agrees to provide the statistical organization with data via a provision agreement. This provision agreement specifies an agreed data structure and governs the exchange channel used for the incoming information. And for example, the exchange channel, it could be a questionnaire or it could be an administrative register. And it will receive the information via a particular mechanism, a protocol, such as an interview or a data file exchange. Last part of the story, the data set produced by the exchange channel will be stored in a data resource, which is a collection of data sets, and structured by a data structure, which you have agreed upon beforehand. Now, when we had our GSIM version 1.0, we also had a long list of what benefits you could expect to experience. And then, remember, this version 1.0 came out in 2012. And then we had an international meeting with at least 50 different participants in October 2016. And we hung up all these benefits on the walls of the meeting room. And we asked people to go around and to tick which benefits they had already experienced after 4 years working with GSIM. And the top 4 benefits were these ones. That the GSIM provides a common language to improve communication between statistical organizations at national and international levels. That the GSIM, in combination with the generic statistical business process model, creates an environment prepared for reuse and sharing of methods, components, and processes. Exactly what we need for modernization. The GSIM enables statistical organizations to rethink how their business could be more efficiently organized by defining objects that are common to all statistical production, regardless of the subject matter. Will Whether you're working on demographic statistics, national accounts, economic statistics, there are objects that are common to your statistical production. The GSIM provides a common language to improve communication between the different roles in statistical production: business role, information role, and technology experts. So, okay, we've been mentioning the two models, both the GSIM and the GSBPM. And what is the relationship between them? They are complementary models for the production and management of statistical information. You could just use one. GSBPM is the one that's been around longest. Maybe you're only using that one. But you will get greater value if you use both of these models together. They're designed to work together. The GSBPM models the statistical production process, and it identifies the activities undertaken by producers of official statistics that result in information outputs. GSIM helps describe GSBPM sub-processes by defining the information objects that are used by them, that flow between them, and are created in them in order to produce official statistics. So the diagram at the bottom, you can see on the left you have input, which can be any GSIM information objects. For example, it could be a data set, it could be a variable, and you could put in some process parameters to steer your process. In the middle, you have a GSBPM sub-process. And then on the output side, you have transformed or new GSIM information objects. You might transform your data set. You might derive some new variables. And you can monitor your process and measure it by process metrics. So here we show GSIM information objects in the context of GSBPM. Looking at the GSIM information objects going in and out of your business process. And when we worked with GSIM version 1.0, we had a task force that looked at about 20 information objects and where they were used in GSBPM. And I know that this year there is a task force that has been looking at the GSBPM phase 5, the process phase, and they've been looking at which information objects are relevant in that process and what information objects are supporting the process and what is coming out of the process. Typical information objects that would support your process would be your statistical classifications. They don't get changed in your business process, but they do support the process, either for collecting your information or publishing your information at the end of the process. So if the GSBPM is considered as a reference framework for statistical production processes, the first level can be considered as equivalent to statistical production process as a whole. So that is your entire organization. And on the input side, you have a statistical need, and you have some group information objects from your structures group and your concepts group that you already have available in your organization. And then you can do your statistical program, use process patterns which will say, this is the demographic statistics, but we can handle these information objects in the same way as for our industrial statistics. And that on your output side, you have some evaluation and assessment of how the process went, and you'll also have some new or transformed information objects, both in the structures and in the concepts group. At the next level, it corresponds to a phase of the statistical production process. For example, GSBPM phase 5, the process phase. The next level down corresponds to sub-process. For example, GSBPM 5.3, review and validate. And then you might be looking at business group objects like process step, process control, edit rules, to a more detailed level. So the GSIM is describing the whole, what's going in and out of the whole organization. You can examine just one phase, look at that. You can go down to an individual sub-process and think about what's going in and out and supporting that. And then you can go right down to another level, a fourth level, consisting of individual building blocks within a sub-process, such as detecting financial values that might have 1,000 errors in them, which you might have to then correct or take contact again with your information provider and have them corrected at the source. You could use the GSBPM to design your own imputation process. And note GSBPM version 4 had this as input, but in the version 5 and 5.1, 5.4 is called edit and input. But anyway, you can use this to design your own imputation process. On the left, you see your process input from your concepts and structures groups. In the middle, you have your input sub-process, and your output will be more concepts and structures. But in the middle, as you can see, first you will identify potential errors and gaps. And this sub-process produces a process metric, N, the number of potential errors and gaps that are identified. You would then have a decision point saying what you're going to do. If you don't have any errors or gaps, then you just go straight to the output of that process will become the input in the next sub-process. But if you have more than 0, then you make a decision and you have to determine the appropriate treatment and how to apply that to potential errors and gaps. You would have to examine those finds in more detail. So this is just a summary of where you could find out more. You could go into the UNEC GSIM wiki, and there it's particularly interesting. I mean, if you want to try to introduce this model into your own organization, then there's a 2-page brochure, which you could translate into your own language and distribute in your organization. There's also the communication paper, which is about 10 pages, which you could translate into your own language and distribute it. As soon as you start working with the GSIM, you will need to look at this glossary. In the glossary, you have the terms and the definitions for every information object. At the present moment, there are 129 information objects which appear in that glossary. And then the fun part in the GSIM is this clickable GSIM. And it's so simple that you just go in there and you click on any information object and you will find more details on that information object. This is very useful. Let's just have a wee look. For example, here is your GSIM version 1.2 glossary. The moment the objects are sorted alphabetically, but you could click on the group column and then you could sort by group. So you get all your base information objects together and your concepts, your business first, next, and then your concepts, and then your exchange group. So if you're wondering what is it, you can see for the administrative register, it belongs to the exchange group. You get a definition that an administrative register is a source of administrative information which is obtained from an external organization, or sometimes it might be from another department of the same organization. And on the right, you can see you've got explanatory text as well. But what you can do, you can sort by object, you can sort by group, but you could just click on the object. So we click on the object, and now we're in the clickable GSIM. So on the left-hand side, you can see you're in the clickable GSIM version 1.2. And on the left-hand side, you could show the whole GSIM on one page, all 129 information objects. You could examine the base group in more detail, the business group, the concept group. In this case, we're under the exchange group, and we're looking in particular at the administrative register. What we're seeing is the administrative register and its nearest neighbours. This diagram is showing us that the administrative register is a type of exchange channel. And that was the end of my introduction. So that is the end of the beginning, and now the rest of the day we will be exploring this in more detail.